All right, back to it. What were we doing? Being pleased with the fact that our zombie spawning areas are no longer in a visible part of the map, I think. Where actually are they? I don't know. Where does the zombie come from? I guess the zombie comes from this way? Okay. Very well. Ooh, we can hear a little bit of the music. The one music track that I grabbed off of Open Game Art and slapped into this. Yeah. It's interesting, the pathing. Not sure why it decided to go that way, but whatever. Goodbye, Survivor. Also, I should at some point fix the rigging on the characters, maybe. Anyway. Okay, so what are we doing? We have maybe I don't want the boundary preview things that. So I think now how does this work? Boundary, world boundary? No. Boundary, world boundary, ground with boundaries. Is this the scene? Hold on, let's get 3D. Okay, so it's an actual scene that has a mesh here for some reason. And then we have meshes for the boundaries. And I thought part of the idea was that it would change the opacity. But maybe that's not a, let's see. We have a script. World boundary markers. So this just like moves them when you call set boundary. Okay. Do we even want this? Like the only purpose of this is we call set boundaries. Maybe I'm just gonna remove this, right? So there's a bunch of documentation here about boundary marker visibility. World boundary markers GD. Tracks camera position relative to boundaries. Calculates distance to each boundary. Fades markers from transparent to 50% opacity based on distance. I don't think it's doing that. Maybe if it did that, I would be less annoyed with it. But we don't even use this. Okay, so what calls set boundaries? This. When we can, so basically when the scenario loads, we call this. What we don't do is anything when, hold on, just stop the game. When anything with the camera changes, right? The camera to track, but we don't actually do anything. I don't even know. Do we have like any kind of signal off the camera? Seems like no. Do we want to? Do we want to? I mean, I don't know. I don't know that the world boundary marker stuff even makes sense. Because you're gonna see that because you're not gonna be able to move the camera any further. So maybe let's just ditch this whole concept, right? And so we get rid of this and see what that breaks. Okay, so now we don't need to do this. What else? So we don't need this script anymore. We don't need any of these files anymore. right? Ground with boundaries, scene, world boundary marker, script. No, world boundary marker is that. Okay, great. And then there's some documentation here talking about the boundary marker visibility that can all go away. Okay. Let's just search for the word boundaries. So this part is no longer relevant. None of that was implemented anyway. Not a thing. Not a thing. Not a thing. And we don't have any meshes related to the boundaries anymore, so that can all go away. Boundary visibility isn't a thing. Not a thing. This could be a thing that we could do. Adding like particles or fog or something at the edge. Not really actually necessary. I mean, it might be cool, like as you approach. Not a thing. This could be a thing. Yeah, okay, we can use two. All right, so updating documentation is good. Like for other people or for AI, right? So there's not anyone else working on this project at the moment, but future people or future me, like if say I put this down and then came back to it after an extended period of time, maybe that documentation would be useful. It's going to be really bad if I like point an LLM at this project and it's like, this documentation says it does this. It may convince it of things that aren't true. Future you will thank you, yes. Future AIs will thank me. Okay, so let's give this a run and see if this is broken at all. Okay, so we no longer see the boundary at all. We just have a nice shady yellow. And we can actually zoom in quite a ways here if we want. We can zoom out midway. At one point I was gonna have a thing, maybe that got broken. There used to be a thing that would indicate like a off-screen, like, oh, there's a zombie coming this way. Did I break that? Am I imagining that? It's like off-screen indicator? Yeah. Off-screen indicator was a thing. So like if we look in our UI, we look remote and then main and UI, off-screen indicator is here. Indicator margin, indicator size. Like if we go down here, like I expect there would be something on the screen that would indicate that, oh, there's a thing coming. The fact this is null, I wonder if there's something we're supposed to be setting up that is not getting set up in the UI. Take a look at that. So UI, off-screen indicator. Maybe this has been broken since we changed how scenarios get loaded. Yeah, there's no. Okay, so let's see. Off-screen indicator.gd. So there's a place for a camera and an enemy spawner. That's interesting. Okay, so find game components is supposed to be searching for the camera and the enemy spawner. I don't know if that's something we want it to do like that, but okay. Huh. So find game components. What does this get called from? In ready. So theoretically, maybe that could work. Do we get errors? I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening. Yeah, there we go. Off-screen indicator could not find enemy spawner. And minimap that we haven't used yet cannot find enemy spawner. Interesting. But I guess it could find the camera? Should probably pay attention to the stuff in red, huh? Okay, so find enemy spawner. It's called on tree, get tree.root. And it's supposed to say, hey, if this node is a system enemy spawner, that's a thing, right? Say system enemy spawner. But I'm guessing that this does not get triggered. Like this, all this stuff happens when the game loads, not when a scenario is loaded. So I mean, we can do this here, but what we really need to do is we need to hook onto a signal from somewhere. Scenario manager dot scenario started. And we'll define a function on scenario started, which is clear active indicators actually a thing? I guess so. But we also want to, find game components. I guess the camera doesn't move, so we could be more specific here and be like find enemy spawner. No, because then we have, well, there's not, based on the current implementation, there's not a need to find the camera again, but, and honestly, yeah, let's do this. Let's could not find enemy spawner. We're gonna just split this. We're gonna move this into here, and then we're gonna move the camera finding directly into ready, because the enemy spawner is never going to be present when this is loaded, so there's no point in looking for it. So rather than duplicating code, we'll just split the thing up and use them directly. Now in the minimap, which I haven't touched in forever, we probably have a similar situation where we're looking for the enemy spawner. Hey, it's like it's the same thing. Maybe we should just have a place where the camera and the enemy spawner are stored, like in a singleton that we can grab rather than trying to search for it. Let's create a new GitHub issue to update various systems to, instead of trying to find the current enemy spawner and camera, store a reference to the camera and enemy spawner in a auto load so that various places can directly pull it rather than attempting to scan the scene tree. This should also address an issue where the enemy spawner is not present until a scenario is loaded. It'll think for a little bit. In the meantime, what do we want to do here? What do we want to do next? How did we end up on that? Oh, right. We're trying to figure out why the off-screen indicator wasn't indicating. I think we fixed that, though, right? So now when the game runs, and it just take a little bit, we've set it to have a little bit of delay before the one and only zombie spawns in. What we should see what we should have seen is a little indicator here saying a zombie is coming, but we don't. So that's unfortunate. I mean, we get a hint because of the path, the debug line for the pathing, but that's not what the indicator is. Look at the shadow. It's great. Although, it's interesting. Why no off-screen indicator? So if we look at remote, main. Did I? Okay, UI, off-screen indicator. Enemy spawner is still null. Camera is this. That's interesting. So camera, find camera. Scenario manager, scenario started, connect, on scenario started. Did we get a warning saying could not find enemy spawner? Yeah. Oh, for minimap, not for other thing. Okay. But do we know this was actually called? Does scenario started get called? One would think so. One would think so. Did we fully stop and restart the game? Maybe we didn't. Maybe I should decrease the time before the zombie spawns in. Okay, so no indicator still. We can't even see the zombie yet. They're out here. So we should definitely see a thing indicating that there's a zombie off screen. Yet we do not. So enemy spawner is not set, which it needs to be for this to work. Could we manually fix this up to see if there's any other issues? We go into the scenario, we would grab the enemy spawner, we would copy node path? Is that a thing that we can do? I don't know. And then enemy spawner, paste value? Doesn't seem to want to work. Okay, So why are we? Okay, scenario started. On scenario started. Let's add so we didn't get a log, right? Because it'd be red for off-screen indicator. Nope. Okay. So maybe we're just not getting there. Somehow the scenario started event isn't firing. Possible. Else. Okay. And then let's grab this. So one of those two have to run if that is getting called. Right? But it's not, well, we're not there yet. Okay, so it's not getting called. Interesting. What's going on in the debugger? Anything interesting here in the errors? Signals died to damage already connected. The parameter enemy is never used. Integer division. Okay, so various things that are not going to be causing issues for what we're trying to do right now. Okay, so this never gets called. That's interesting. One would think that it would. So it's just here, right? And this is the only place that emits that, right? Apparently, nothing listens to it, so that would explain why. Maybe we wouldn't have noticed that there's a problem. What's logging look like from Scenario Manager? So Scenario Manager initialized, scenario progression loaded, current scenario set to scenario 1. Okay. So to log that, we have to omit scenario started. Okay. Confused. Oh, yeah, okay. So it wants to create this issue, create a centralized auto load for camera 3D, enemy spawner references. Yeah, that looks reasonable. And this is in the right repo. Yeah. Allow. Okay, so we have a contradiction. We have a contradiction, right? So we see this log line. So this line is called. And if that's the case, then this also has to be called. Oh, when we emit scenario started, we emit with a scenario ID. But on it, scenario started does not take a scenario ID. I wouldn't think. Is it an int? No, it's a string. I wouldn't think that would prevent us from connecting the signal. A signal can only be connected once to the same callable. If the signal is already connected, this method returns invalid parameter. Okay, well, I don't know. Is that the source of the problem? Just like arguments not agreeing? So the thing that we're looking for is off-screen indicator, which has nothing. So we have no off-screen indicator that the zombie is there, which it is. Right, so we should see something, but we don't. What's up with that? What is up with that? So neither of these emit? Is my logger yes? Don't get it. Okay, this issue got created. That's nice. Maybe ultimately that will be the thing that makes this issue go away. I don't know. We'll see if we can understand why. Like, it seems just like a contradiction, right? Of like, okay, well, for this to get to here, we see it gets to a certain point. It logs that it got to a certain point. So all the stuff above it must have also gotten run. But then, yeah, okay. So let's sanity check some things here. So my logger.info. Okay, so we'll see that this ready function gets called in the order it gets called. In scenario manager, let's log. If we get to here, we can debug. I don't know if that's below our current log level. No, it's not. We see debug messages. So maybe the logging here will give us a clue as to what's going on. Also, we have a print somewhere that's applying music pause setting. Okay, at some point, the zombie will spawn in. Okay, but we don't see an off-screen indicator. Off-screen. So initializing off-screen indicator is here at 46.185 seconds. 185, right? About the same time, because these things are all getting, like, ready is being called on all the children of the UI node, which includes the off-screen indicator and the mini-map. And then scenario. Where is scenario manager? Wait. Setting current scenario. Okay, so this is the issue. So the off-screen indicator isn't getting readied until after the scenario is loaded. Why? Right, so I know why. So we're on the main menu, we start game. All the stuff before the game loads is in this scene, and then the main scene is where the UI in the game and the scenario itself is loaded. So we are loading the scenario at the same time all of this stuff is being added to the scene tree. And so the scenario is loaded before the off-screen indicator is ready. Which is interesting and kind of that points to there being a different problem than the one we were trying to fix, right? Because what we were trying to do is being like, okay, well, maybe the scenario isn't loaded yet, and so we will wait, right? We'll wait to try to find the enemy spawner until the scenario loads. Well, guess what? The scenario is already loaded, but we couldn't find the enemy spawner. Maybe they're both. maybe sometimes they're both the case. So let's manually call on scenario started to just cover the case if we so we'll be ready to accept an event saying, hey, the scenario has started. But also, let's go ahead and just check to see if we can find the enemy spawner. We'll just warn here in this case. And this should be fine. Let's do that. Okay, so let's try this now. Surely if we do both, one of them will work. Maybe not. Because there's definitely a zombie here. Yeah, it's right there. So there should be an on-screen indicator. There is still not. Because in main UI off-screen indicator, enemy spawner is null. So that's interesting. So one of the things that suggests is that the scenario is not actually ready when the signal is emitted. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, the scenario itself, does it have a signal? No. Maybe it should. Maybe it should have a signal. Right. So let's give it a different name to make it different from the signal in this scenario manager. So at the end of ready, what we're going to do is we're going to say scenario loaded emit. Then in scenario manager, we're done with things after we set this current scenario ID. At what point do we actually do we actually manage the scenario in scenario manager? There's a question for you. So we have scenario metadata. This lets something get the scenario metadata. Load data, save data, reset data. Save progression now. Manual save method for external use now delegates the save manager, but nothing calls that. Same thing with delete saved progression. Okay. Legacy methods go away. There's nothing calling them. Is it a good idea to just randomly make other changes to your work in progress? No, maybe not, but I'm doing it just to clean things up as I go. So set current scenario. So what calls set current scenario ID? Too many things. Okay, great. Scenario started, scenario ended. Mark scenario completed. Set current wave, clear current scenario, get current scenario ID. Okay, well, we have a bunch of tests. So first of all, test star. Let's get rid of all that. Don't need to see that right now. So the save manager gets information about the current scenario ID. Scenario.gd gets the current scenario ID. Main does. Okay. Scenario scene. Load scene path. Scene path is coming from metadata from here. I wonder... Yeah, I mean, this stuff we should do here, but I'm wondering if there's some stuff that's happening here that should be moved into Scenario Manager to then be able to await, like, to be able to provide a signal when the current scenario is actually fully loaded and ready, so that then we can know about that in other places to be able to, you know, do things. Right. So that's what I was hoping with signals. Scenario started is that, oh, scenario started. Okay, let's go and do things. Well, it's interesting. Nothing is using scenario started. Nothing is listening to it. So I think we're going to repurpose scenario started to emit in the scenario manager when the scenario is actually instantiated and ready. That's kind of what I'm thinking I want to do here. So I think we need to move this line and these lines and these lines. Do we need metadata for anything else? Does anything else call get scenario metadata? Yes, other things do. Okay, so we're going to create a new method. The point of this method is, do we need scenario ID for anything else in here besides getting the metadata and logging? I mean, okay, I'll leave that as is, but let us... Okay, so we have these sections: runtime state management, persistent progression management, savable system interface implementation. Okay, so probably above all of this, we will define a new method. And this method will be something like instantiate scenario. We're already going to have the scenario ID, so I don't know if there's a point in trying to we do have a current scenario ID, but I don't think we want to do that. Scenario ID is empty. Default to scenario 1 of no scenario set. Set current scenario ID. If it's empty, that's interesting. Oh, right, because this is just getting the current scenario. I think what I'll do is I'll just do instant scenario, and it's not going to take any arguments. And what we're going to do is we're also going to get, well, we have the current scenario ID, right? Because it's in current scenario ID. So we'll say if current scenario ID is an empty string, well, we want a default, and currently we have a hard-coded default. We're gonna improve this. I'm gonna do const default scenario ID. There we go. Could we just change the empty string to default to that default? Why go? No, I think we'll do this. We'll say if it's empty. I really wish you would stop Copilot. problem is like it's suggesting something, I think off screen. I'm hitting tab and it's like going elsewhere, and I don't like it. Anyway, we could temporarily pause Copilot if that was really bugging me. How am I doing on tokens? 1.4%. I'm fine. Okay. So I think we'll try to emulate what we already have here. Current scenario ID equals default scenario ID. And then we do want to get the metadata. And then we are going to var scene path. If scene path is empty, then we're gonna log an error and return. Yeah, we should return null. And then scenario scene. Load scene path. If we don't get a scenario scene, we'll log and return null. This stuff will stay here. So I think at this point, we have eliminated the need for all of this and this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say current scenario equals scenario manager instantiate scenario. If we can't instantiate it, we bail out. We will continue to allow the main script to own populating things between the scenario and the rest of the things. Great. So, to make it so the signal will work, so that we get a signal when the scenario is actually ready, we need to do something a little asynchronous, because the scenario is not going to be ready. Like, we can't await scenario scene dot whatever we called it, scenario loaded, right? Because it won't happen until after this returns, and main adds current scenario as a child of itself. So what we need to do is we need to do, let's make a new function here called scenario handle scenario loaded. And we don't, I don't know that we need an argument here. Hold that thought for a second. How do we like defer execution of something? Call deferred, yeah. So we can do handle scenario loaded dot call deferred. Scenario scene, like so, and then we will just take scenario scene as a as an argument. Except no, we're missing a step here. So we have the packed scene, but we need to instantiate const instance colon equals scenario scene instantiate, and not const var. It's the TypeScript coming through, and then go away. We pass the instance, and then we return the instance, right? So that whoever's calling this instantiate scenario will get the scenario instance, the actual scene like subtree to do stuff with, and then we take our scenario and we say, hey, well, we could connect it, but we're not going to connect it. What we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, we want to await scenario.scenario loaded. I'll wait for that signal to get fired, which will happen sometime between when this returns and other stuff happens. And then once the scenario is loaded, then we say scenario started.emit current scenario ID. And we can log too, right? Scenario is instantiated and ready. So that might work. I don't know. I'm not a Godot expert, but we'll see. We'll see if this works. My hope is that this will trigger the scenario started. It'll emit that signal only once the whole scene tree for the scenario has loaded, which is good because then our UI components will be able to key off of that to know that they can load things. And I don't think we need... we can do both. We can do both. Okay, so let's give it a try. Okay, it didn't crash, so that's a good sign. Although maybe it'll crash once the enemy loads in. I don't know. Can we go faster? Okay, so I still don't see... We see a zombie. It's coming. We don't see an off-screen indicator, unfortunately. So what's going on? I mean, maybe the off-screen indicator thing is broken too? It's been a while since I've seen it. Off-screen indicator. Also, there's a spawn indicator. How about that? What does that do? Oh, that's this. That's this over here, yeah. Off-screen indicator is this. Enemy spawner is still null. That's unfortunate. Off-screen. Okay, so initialized, could not find enemy spawner. What about scenario manager? Okay, so initialized, scenario progression loaded, current scenario set to scenario 1, but we don't see scenario instantiated and ready. So why not? Let's add some logging. Do we ever see this? Waiting for scenario to load. Yes. But it never does. But it never does. Okay, so scenario loaded is supposed to happen when we're ready. Unless it's already happened. How does a wait work for the signal? Wait, do we is there like a built-in signal? There is a built-in signal for ready. So maybe we just don't need this at all. Let's try that. Maybe that will work. Yay, something different happened. Okay, scenario manager line 102. Also, we didn't save. Right, that's probably the problem. We didn't save, so it had out-of-date stuff. Okay, let's try now. Like, we were still referring to scenario loaded as a thing, but that didn't exist anymore. Alright, so waiting for scenario 1 to load. Seems like it's still waiting. Oh, it spawned over here this time. Okay, well anyway, so we never get to this line, scenario instantiated and ready. Emitted when the node is considered ready after underscore ready is called. On this instance that we instantiate. Did we update main to actually use? We did, right? Everything else seems to, like, we get the scenario and we do things that we would notice if this wasn't connected to the right thing. So presumably, like, we will see the scenario loaded successfully before we see waiting for scenario to load. I don't think it has to be that way, but it can be that way. Scenario loaded successfully, waiting to load. So let's look at Godot docs. So many tabs. Godot signals. Using signals. This is 4.4. We could be looking at 4.5 docs, I guess. Yep. So when we await, okay, this is talking about doing it through the editor. But if we await a signal, but by the time we've awaited the signal, we're like awaiting in code, the signal's already fired. I'm guessing we just missed the boat. Use connect. Does it talk about the await keyword here for GDScript? Custom signals. Emit. So no. Okay. GDScript reference. Await. Waits for a signal or coroutine to finish. See awaiting signals or coroutines. Await keyword can be used to create coroutines, which wait until a signal is emitted before continuing execution. Use the await keyword with a signal or a call to a function that is also a coroutine. Will immediately return control to the caller when the signal is submitted. It will resume execution from that point, from the point on where it stopped. From the point on where it stopped. Okay, sure. In this case, the wait confirmation becomes a coroutine, which means the caller also needs to await it. So this becomes a coroutine, but we're not awaiting it. What happens if you use call deferred on a coroutine? If you don't depend on the result, you can just call it asynchronously, which won't stop execution and won't make the current function a coroutine, right? We'll just call it. As long as we're not looking for a value back. I guess in that case, we could just like call it this way. And that becomes asynchronous. Let's find out. Okay, so let's start the game again. Start, play. Okay. Scenario 1 instantiated and ready. So now, let's get this a zombie. Okay, I still don't see the off-screen indicator. So there's the zombie. It's coming. We don't have an off-screen indicator, unfortunately. So, I mean, again, potentially other things are wrong because it's been a while since I've seen this work. But I have seen this work. This did work at one point. We'd like it to work again because otherwise this is going to cause problems. Enemy spawner is null. So, we still didn't find the enemy spawner. Enemy spawner. Off-screen indicator cannot find enemy spawner. Okay, so off-screen. Okay. And we're not seeing this happen twice. Didn't I? Yeah, we do call this, and then we also wait for the signal. Wait, are we... We do see the scenario instantiated and ready, right? In the log? Yeah, instantiated and ready. Okay. So that happened. So we must emit the signal. Sure. Let's try that, just in case that is the problem. Arguments agreement. Aha, it was. It was. That's interesting. Okay. Even if we don't need it. Ah, yeah, look. Granted, it's a placeholder texture. We should make a real texture. Okay, but that will that'll have to be after the break. We gotta take a break here. I'll be back in a couple minutes, and we'll fix the off-screen indicator and continue working on this. So.